Hi, I'm Nina Liakino, Artistic Director of English Theater here at the National Arts Center. And I'm here about to go into a deep dive conversation with award-winning playwright Anousheh Roy and celebrated artist Tanya Momi. It's an honor to be in your presence and to kind of, just jumpstart this conversation. This is the first time you folks are meeting, and yet you are connected in so many deeply profound ways. So we're going to unpack that a little bit, if that's okay with you guys. Mm-hmm. My first question is to the both of you. So can each of you share your personal connection to the partition and what inspired your work in relation to this historical event?
Hearing stories from my father, he started publishing at age 14 and reading his short stories and his books on partition. And I didn't know where to start this. And my parents taking us back to Pakistan to see my mother's home. I'm 12 years old, under 12, and sitting in her home with all these neighbors gathered. And my mother's crying, and I thought it was very embarrassing for me. We are sitting in a strange country with a strange neighborhood, and why she's crying. I did not understand what was going on that time. And then I did my education in visual art, and I became a painter. Hearing their stories, I really wanted to put something on a canvas, so I did a Facebook Live, and I had bought a gauze. I said, I can't understand their wounds. So I started painting, and next thing I know, I did 17 paintings, and the art has been very well accepted. And I'm telling my grandparents, my parents' story, which they told us, and that's what my art is about.
My personal connection to the partition is I grew up around the dinner table hearing stories about the war. There's a Bengali word called juddho, which means war. And I often did not understand if we were talking about the World War II, which my grandmother on my dad's side survived, or we were talking about partition, which my mom's side survived. And it's just 5 years between each other, you know. Mm. My mom's side was in, which is now Bangladesh, at the time was East Pakistan. For business, they owned a sweet shop. And overnight, they had to pull the shutters with sweets inside it and flee to the other side, because now that is Hindu India and I'm Hindu. And they really believed that one day they would come back to open up their shop again. Mm-hmm. And that was not allowed, right? And then on Amma, on my dad's side, because she survived 1945, World War II, her stories were harrowing about the war. But because the stories were so interchangeable in their experience of women and children experiencing the war, it was always called juddho in my house. So I often would be like, what juddho are we talking about? So my spectrum of war and displacement was really created under that 5-year span of how harrowing someone's life can be. And later, as I grew up, I started to ask more specific questions about the partition and the gravity of the loss. You know, one of the world's largest mass migration. And what the British did was a big live conversation in our family. So that always lived with me. So it wasn't like I went out looking to do a play about partition. It was never separate of me. It's like as if I write in multiple languages. It's not separate of me. It is me. So same with that. Same with how I came about to talk about partition.
Tanya, your artwork, obviously, you had just talked about how it you became the vessel, for the memories and for the feelings and for your own kind of lived experiences of the partition. And from my observation, looking at your beautiful, stunning artwork, I love that it captures a duality of that event. So it's about kind of the immediate impact in the moment, which we'll talk about with Try and Moon, but also its very complex aftermath, right? And so both the artwork always expresses pain, but beauty, light and darkness, hope and then despair. There's a sense of oppression and then liberation. So how do you navigate and balance these contrasting elements in your work, and why is it important to kind of show those two sides of that history?
So I'll start from the last question, why it's important. I think it's very important. Even I was born in India and I was read Indian history, but the history does not tell you the whole story, the truth. So what it really ignited me, I've been in California for 42 years, and I have a lot of South Indian friends. And the funny part was they would tell me, which really was painful, they would say, your people could have stayed behind. Why did they migrated? Because they have read the books and the literature saying, no, India was divided. You didn't have to leave. And I could not answer their questions. And then they will say, they're your people. And like they are Indian and we are not. That was the other question. And then they say, your people drive taxis. Your people do this. Your people. And it really was very painful for me to hear that. And hearing my parents' story, being a refugee in their own birth country. And my dad has a story to tell, which really, really, I'm going to do one surprise for you guys, which is wrote a book. It's called Daughter of a Refugee. And which is, the title came from my dad's incident. He's 13 or 14 years old, and he's now in India. It's a summer vacation, 1947. He's walking with his mother through a village where he has now temporarily settled. So he's hungry. And in a village, when a child is hungry, you can knock on any stranger's door and ask for food. So he knocked on the door. His mother knocked on the door of this woman. And she opened the door, and she looked at them. And the mother said, my son is hungry. Do you mind sharing a piece of bread with him? And she looked at them and she said, oh, you guys we trade you with Muslims. Oh, you're refugees. And she did not respect them, and she thought these are not good people. So she went inside and brought a piece of bread, which was so old that my dad, when he took it, he said he couldn't even chew it. And that really bothered him a lot. We are suppressing our emotions and feelings, and being born in our own country, we are called refugees and not treated as who sacrifice India. We are the real Indians. We are the one who should be acknowledged, not the person sitting in the South Asia, somewhere in Tamil or Kerala. They say, we are Indians and you are not Indian. And that really, really, hearing that from my parents, that really started digging in my heart. And I didn't know where to start, what to paint. And now I have over 17 paintings and my book and artifacts. It is so deep embedded in me. I can only tell you piece by piece, which each painting that comes out, and I don't know what is going to be next.
Yeah. With that pain that you feel, how do you find the opposite of that? Because it's still in your work, which is, again, what makes, the contrast so beautiful, right? Like it could all be harrowing, but you find the beauty in that too. So like, how do you do it?
So there's only two ways. What she's doing and what I'm doing. We're bringing the awareness, the knowledge. Without a knowledge, even you're Indian, you don't know your own history. The history books has to change. Yeah. We have to put the message, the next generation. 20 million people are uprooted and 2 million are killed brutally. And we are not recognizing, acknowledging it. I'm just saying peacefully, just look at your grandparents and great-grandparents and your parents went through. And I'm the first generation born in independent India.
So, Anushree, Trident Moon. This is a story that follows women who are in an impossible circumstance, who like in real time going through one obstacle after another as they fight their way, and try and reach safety. What, from your creator's point of view, why was it important for you to tell a story in the moment? To keep the tension and the urgency so present, because there's lots of plays that deal with trauma, but often it's like it's really talked about by characters, you know, and referenced as the past. But what makes this play really quite unique is that, you know, you take us there in the moment. So, you know, when you were channeling the spirits and writing this play, like, why was it so important to you that this be in real time?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. For me, when I sat down to write the play, I sat down to pray and I asked the gods what it should be. Mm-hmm. Tell me what it should be. And the image that I saw, and we've actually never talked about it. You're my director. You've directed this play. You've been with this show multiple times. You've done development on it as well. When we did it at the Stratford Festival as a workshop. Yeah. The image that you created, that harrowing image of a lineup that you had built, that is the first vision that I saw. I swear to God, I can show you my old reference notes when you come to LA to visit, or next time I'll bring my reference.
No, I'm going to come to you. When you come to
me, I'll show it to you. Where one of the first notes I wrote down was a lineup of women at the lip of the stage, and that's what you made happen. And we never, ever, ever spoke about it.
No, we did not.
And this is the first time on the radio I'm realizing, as you're asking me this, that was the first vision I had. That was a lineup of women, and in the original vision, they were talking to each other. And your vision, they're silent because they have nothing more to say, right? Yeah. And then each person says one pertinent thing before they go to the new land. Yeah. So I asked the gods what it had to be. They showed me a lineup of women. And then I said, okay, who are they? And one by one, these people's characters came. Sonali came, my character came, my sister came. One by one, they showed me who they were. Mm-hmm. Nina, I wrote it down. I did not interfere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have this play is untouched from what God gave me and what is present on stage. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I have done, which I have never done before, is the first time I've ever done anything like this before, is I've gone in and I've actually revised certain lines by a character named Sonali to make it brighter. Mm-hmm. But I've not done that before, like because I'm not a default, you know, comedy writer, and her character has some really fun lines. So I've gone in and made lines funnier, but I've not changed plot. I have not changed tracks. I've not changed dynamics. I've left it as God gave it to me. Yeah. And for me, it was really important because to leave it untouched, that's just what I do as an artist, but also because I felt like if that's what arrived, that's what must be on the stage. Mm-hmm. It's not my job to go in and write the play. Yeah. It's my job is to be a vessel, to listen. Yeah. So the play came that way, and I'm glad it came that way because my brand of writing, if there is such a thing, is very unsentimental. It's really important to me. My flag goes up anytime there's sentimentality on stage. So I feel like I'm grateful that it came that way because it's really unsentimental, the play, you know, and as you have directed so masterfully, where there is sentiment and there's literally one scene, one moment, one unit where a character gets to have a mourning moment, you know, a 3-minute segment on screen. They earn that, and then it's done. Yeah, you know. But the mourning is for the audience, but that's how it arrived. Yeah, so I left it alone. Yeah. You know, and this whole play, as many of my plays, have just been built on prayer. Yeah, yeah. So I've just left it alone. You know, but that's what happened.
So you just saw it.
I just saw it.
Like the truck is moving. Yes. We're not in a flashback, right? Nope. Which is often another device.
That's right.
Right? When we're talking about memory.
That's right.
You know, so it really allows, you know, as somebody that wrote it and as somebody that interpreted the work, it just allowed me to show it to the audience as opposed to characters talking about it.
Because we're not going back in time.
We're not going back in time. Like we are in the time.
Yes, you know? That's right.
Which I think, you know, there's a danger, which I love about that. There's a safety when we look at something as a flashback or as a memory, right? Because there's distance. But you're asking the audience, no, come through this time machine.
And tell me more about the danger. Like, what does that mean?
Well, because we got to feel what we're going to feel.
Oh, you're right.
Like, do you know what I mean? And we are not reminded, like, oh, that this is a flashback. Or, oh, this is a dream. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that what is unfolding on stage is happening for real. That these are human beings making decisions on the fly, like, you know, and they're winging it and they're surviving,
and some terrible decisions objectively.
It is just happening. It is going. It hasn't been done before, right? So there is, you know, and like I'm very much attracted to dangerous work, right? Because it is asking the audience to take a leap of faith, you know, in a very different way. It's not just suspending disbelief. It is actually telling them to believe all the things and dive right in.
Yes.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, open your hearts and just
Go.
come with us.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So what does it mean to tell and retell these stories for the future generation?
I think it's really, really important that it is not forgotten. It means a tremendous amount of responsibility for me to continue to tell these stories, because I would not be here had they not made the decision to survive. And there are some conversations I've had with my amma, my grandmother on my dad's side, where she didn't know if she wanted to or could, but she still did. Do you know what I mean? Like, every decision, she had her child in the middle of the war, 9 months pregnant, holding the baby as Japan is carpet bombing Burma. And she's running around trying to find shelter, holding this little baby and wondering if she'll live. So her decisions to keep living has allowed me to write this play for you and I to be here today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's and also just for so that generation to generation, these stories are not forgotten.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's almost a responsibility.
Yeah.
What I will say is, yesterday, for the first time, I felt as an actor, and I know I'm only here as a playwright, but I'm also an actor in the show. This show is a little bit hard to do. And yesterday was the first time I felt that. Because normally I don't actually feel that. Like, I just feel I go and channel and I get off stage. But yesterday I thought, this is hard. I'm sad. This is hard. Because if you're a very present actor, you're actually inside every beat, every night, being really present and experiencing it and not just putting it on for the show, you know?
Yeah.
That's hard, and I've not actually felt that ever. So that's a new thing to feel, you know, because that makes it go. I can't get tired with my emotion. I don't mean physically, because I still must. The show must go on, and I always say this to everybody at work. They've heard me say it when people go, "Oh, I'm so tired," and I always make this little joke, which I'm not joking, is when I go, well, given that they experienced it and all we're doing is showing it, wonder who is actually tired.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
it's like our job. We must be doing it
yeah.
to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So that's for me. That's what it is. I'm so curious to hear what it is for you.
Yeah.
So I'll piggyback on you. I think people must see a play, because play has the emotions and the feelings. Movie, you can go home and reflect, you know, just kind of forget. But I think that to keep this alive and the history to preserve, a play and a painting. A painting stays on the wall, and I think your play should be travel all over India, especially
From your mouth to God's ears.
we are creating this, planting this seed right now. I want people to hear us. This is your ancestor, our ancestors who went through this. People want to know history. Don't forget history. Nobody else should be teaching you your own history. It should be taught in India and Pakistan to see where just 78 years ago, it is not 100 years. And there's only very few survivors have left. Please, if you're hearing about this, watch the play. Come and see the art and reach out to people. If you know somebody who has survived, please hear them, because they really shut their mouth. They didn't want anybody to know. And this is what I would say. Your play, I can't wait to see it. And I know it's going to be very emotional for me, because my father was Punjabi writer and a journalist, and he wrote over 22 books. His first book was published on Keho Jaisi Jeevan, how was his life in Pakistan, part 2 in India, and then he lived in Canada. And I did not think I was be coming back to Canada this year, because he passed away suddenly August 21st, 2024, and I felt like I'm not coming home. For me, it's very, very emotional for me to coming back, and my dad comes in my dreams many, many times. And I see him on a stage and introducing me. I don't know what he's telling me and what my purpose is. My purpose is to paint, and the art will stay on the walls. This art should be traveling around the globe, just like we talk about Holocaust survivors and Japan has moved on. India needs to moved on in peace and accept their own tragedy and recognize we are not asking for anything. Just remember your history.
Yeah.
You know, there's a point I wanted to make
Yeah.
about earlier. You talked about the word refugee, being a refugee in your country. This play, I was very allergic to, because I did a lot of research from history books, and I realized it was telling history books written by Muslim writers was a very certain framework. History books written by Hindu writers were a very certain framework, and Punjabi writers or Sikh writers, very certain framework. And there's a consistent narrative of a very clean-cut history, which I knew is not true. So when I started to talk about oral history and talk to people about oral history more, which I knew a lot of anyway because I grew up in that environment, a thought that came to me was told to me on all fronts was we were refugees and we didn't know it. How can you be a refugee and not know that you are one? Because that identity is a very difficult identity to bear. How can you be a refugee in your own land? That doesn't make sense. So when you see the show, this is a small spoiler, no plot spoiler. There's one line, and it almost will pass you by if you're not paying attention, which is my favorite way of writing, is a character says to another character, if we go now, we might get food at the refugee camps. We might get the morning ration at the refugee camp. This other character, who's this beautiful, lovely, joyful character, she says, what is the meaning of the word refugee? And by this time in the play, she is one, and she doesn't know what that means. And that was so important to me to place it in a moment where we're not hanging a light, where it almost passes you by, because that's what's happened to them. And that reminded me of that people became a different identity and they didn't know who they were. So I think that's why it's so important, and I'm so grateful to NAC. Oh my God, NAC staff. The fact that you and I are together, I am so grateful that the staff put us together, because we would never have met and people would never have heard.
Exactly.
Because we are from countries that don't like each other, right?
Exactly.
So, and here we are talking about art created by one of my best friends, my beloved, sister, who has shepherded the story, and her company brought us together. Like, I feel like those things are not coincidence in that regard.
I agree.
All this is to say is I agree with you that the work should travel. I like you feel very passionate.
Yeah.
But the work should travel because it shouldn't be forgotten,
Yeah. If you had to choose one powerful word or a phrase that captures what you hope audiences will take away from experiencing both your work, the play, and your exhibit, what would it be and why?
Right now, we are in a position where we all divided. And my first painting is called Divided. When you stand in front of a painting, there's gauze, which I cannot heal 20 million people's wounds, and 2 million who never got funeral or they never got a goodbye. Those emotions are put it in each painting. And if you can just take one message there, we are not divided. We are undivided India. India is a holy place, birth of Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism is there. India is abundant of spirituality and love and the rivers and the mountains, you name it. But you remember, we are one human beings. And when I was in India, I left India 42 years ago. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, everybody we grew up together. We never heard who was who. We still love them. And if we can, our religion teaches us being one, and can be one again and stop being the divided. I can't heal you, but please find your healing.
Beautiful.
I have a phrase. I would have done the same. There's a lot of choices made in the show, and it's easy to go, why are they doing that? They're terrible people. What kind of women do stuff like that? What's wrong with these women? What's wrong with these children? Terrible choices. That's disgusting. Then you remove yourself, versus if you just really watch objectively and just watch it and watch what they're doing and the why they're doing it, which is in every step you'll understand. I've made sure that people understand the why. I want people to walk away going, yeah, I would have done the same had I been in that circumstance.
Yeah,
Would you have?
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And we touched upon kind of future generations. So what advice would you give to young South Asian artists from all corners who are looking to explore their own histories through art?
I'll give a technical advice to South Asian artists and then a creative advice, or rather like a spiritual advice. Technical advice is get to work. Don't procrastinate. Meet your deadlines.
Easier
Get to
said
work.
than done.
Nope. Get to work. There's no sleep for the wicked. Get to work. I have a zero procrastination policy. Get to work. Sit down and write. If you're a writer, you want to write, sit down and write. Get to work. And a spiritual advice I would say, is stand your ground. This play navigated 13 years of sitting on a shelf till you and Chris Abraham came along. Yeah. Chris Abraham, the director artistic director of Crow's Theatre, who's a producer on this show, a co-producer with NAC and you. Check in, get on your mat, say your prayers if you're religious. If you're not religious, connect with the work and be in alignment with it, because here's the thing about creativity, you are the only vessel for that. So if that is what has arrived to you and it is going to be uncompromising and you cannot compromise on certain aspects of it, you should not compromise. So even if I died and it never got done, that would be fine, I swear to God. Because in my mind, I would know that I wrote something pure and I never diluted it. And that would be okay. Because this show sat on a shelf for 13 years and it got premiered in England till it got its Canadian premiere right now because of you and Chris. So my spiritual advice is stand your ground, but know why. Know why you don't want something to change so you can back up what you're actually wanting, right? And then back to the technical advice is, if you want to be a writer, learn how to structure the play. Learn, I think, because I know how to structure, receiving is easier because I know where I can put things in.
Yeah, there's the craft. There's the talent.
So there's the talent and there's the craft. Talent, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You sit down and you listen, for me.
Yeah.
Craft, I can work on.
Yeah.
So that's the advice. Get your craft right.
I don't have advice, but I can tell my own experience. Is that I didn't know I was painting partition series. One thing we learned from a father, who is a writer and a journalist, he said, feed your brain. And he would even still ask me on the telephone, so what are you reading now? So if you fill your brain with knowledge, have a world knowledge. And I'll give you one example. When I have to give you a perfect example. He's 14 years old, and he said we couldn't afford books anymore. Here, after high school, he was supposed to go to England and study. Of course, partition happened, so now having a farmer's only son has everything. Now they couldn't afford food. They had refugee and living in different refugee camps for 3 years. He said he used to go to the train station and read books people would leave behind. And he memorized them because he knew he would not able to read that book again. And he said, I will leave the book on that place where I found it so somebody else can read it. And that really, really put it inside me, saying that read, fill your brain. So I feed my brain with knowledge. What comes out of that? That is your own birth of knowledge or art or a play. So I did not paint this art to become famous. I never thought this will even leave my home. So don't compare yourself with others. Don't think who became this famous or that famous. Then you lose that battle. Live in forgiveness. Live in gratitude. It is your journey. This is my journey. This is my feelings, what my parents shared, what my grandparents shared, what I saw. My father going back 7 times and hearing his stories. My mother's talking about her home. My grandmother talking about. That is my journey. You cannot compare my journey with yours. Yeah. So I live in forgiveness. I forgive myself so I can forgive others. And we need to understand this partition is very important. If you're Indian, please read your history. And I planted the seed. Now you continue this. Wherever you can talk to somebody, find out. You will find your own mission. Because I don't know what, you will probably become a bigger mission or smaller. But at least, you're listening right now, taking the time, understanding our emotions. Now you build your own emotions and create your own possibilities and own path, and you will see it will shine. You will have a meaningful conversation and meaningful work for you, which you will love. It's not about other people. It's about your own emotions and feelings.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Perfect. And on that note, our conversation is done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.